Hello and welcome to SDSU Live, a live broadcast production of San Diego State University. I'm your host, Lorena Nava-Ruggiero, and today I'm interviewing Josh Suchon, host of Dodger Talk and a 96 alum of our journalism program. Josh, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's an honor to be back on campus.
Yeah, I was going to say there's been a lot of changes since you were here.
I barely recognize the campus. It's a beautiful campus. Not that it wasn't then, but it's even more beautiful now.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of new buildings. I graduated in '04, and even when I came back to campus as an employee a year and a half later, I was like, what is all this stuff? So it's interesting to see how much it changes. Now, you are the host of Dodger Talk and are in town, obviously, for the Dodgers-Padres series. Mm-hmm. And how do you like that?
You know, it's interesting because I grew up in Northern California, and so I wasn't a Giants fan, but I was around enough people that chanted "Beat LA" all the time. And most of my family members can't stand the Dodgers. And so when I got the job, my family members were actually somewhat reluctant to like embrace. And even now, they're just like, yeah, we're really proud of you, but why'd you have to work for the Dodgers? And I said, well, look, there's 30 teams in baseball and only one of them hired your son, Dad, so get over it, right?
It's still a good gig, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I love living in Los Angeles and being back in Southern California, and it's a lot of fun interacting with the fans, the crazy ones, the knowledgeable ones. Hey, it's a sweet gig. I watch a baseball game and I talk about it. It beats working for a living.
That's true. It does. Now, you hadn't always worked in broadcast, though. You used to be a writer for the Oakland Tribune for the Giants. So can you talk about that experience a little bit?
Yeah, I spent 10 years as a newspaper reporter, and I did high schools for 3 years. I did the Giants for 4 years, and then I covered the A's for 3 years. And you know, actually, when I was here at San Diego State, I was a radio, TV, journalism emphasis, and I wanted to get into broadcasting right away, but newspapers sort of discovered me or hired me before the radio and TV would hire me. And so I always wanted to get back into broadcasting. Every year that I went along as a newspaper reporter, it became more difficult to get into broadcasting. And then finally I just decided if I'm going to do this, I need to do it now. I didn't like the direction the newspapers were going. I saw the writing on the wall. My newspaper merged with 2 other newspapers, and I figured I might be out of a job fairly soon anyways with all these mergers going on. And so I decided, all right, I'm going to take a risk here. And so I went to Modesto, about 2 hours southeast of San Francisco, and took a job and worked doing minor league baseball play-by-play and some high school football play-by-play. And I just thought, you know what, I might be here 1 year, I might be here 10 years, but I want to see if I can do it. I want to find out for myself, and I wanted a new challenge, and so it's worked out.
Sounds like it. No, it's obviously different covering Major League Baseball versus SingleA. Do you have any fun stories from your time with the team in Modesto that you can share?
Yeah,
appropriate?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that my favorite day and my least favorite day were back to back. We were in Visalia for a game, and you know, I'm watching batting practice.
I was gonna say Visalia, like the onion.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's like a farm town, though,
yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's almost all farm towns in the California League. Yeah, like the big city is like Lake Elsinore. It's like the big city that you go to. So, you know, I'm watching batting practice, you know, and I'm looking around, and I said to one of the coaches, I'm like, hey, would you mind if I like shag fly balls in the outfield? He's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I grabbed my glove and I ran out to right field, and remember the theme song from the movie Almost Famous?
Oh yeah.
That song happened to start playing as I'm like running out onto the field, and so I'm out there in right field and I'm nervous, and the ball gets hit like right at me, and I go charging in like 3 steps, and I realize it's like 8 steps over my head, and I'm like, oh no, this looks so bad. But I made like 1 running catch, and all the players were clapping for me out there. They were getting excited, and so I thought, oh wow, this is so great. You know, I'm on a field, and then I'm broadcasting a game. And then the next night, it's much cooler, and at about the 3rd inning, it started to rain. Didn't rain hard enough to stop the game, but it rained enough. And the press box in Visalia seats 3 people, so there's not room for the visiting announcer. So the visiting announcer is on a table outside with no roof. So I broadcasted the game in the rain. I got drenched. And I'm like, really? Like between every half inning, I was sitting here thinking, like, do I keep going? Like, so I put a towel over the equipment. I figured the equipment was worth more than I am. So I covered up the equipment, and I just like, all right, I guess I'm just going to do this. And I got completely drenched, and by the 7th inning, I stopped caring that I was drenched, and I was just kind of having fun with it. But for the first 4 innings, I thought, what in the world are you doing here? What did you give up? And why are you here?
Well, it's the glitz and glamour of broadcast.
Yes, the glitz and glamour of minor league baseball. Yeah.
Very
was something.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like you've had some good times and stuff. And you know, you started with the Daily Aztec, and we actually went to the archives and found some of your old
scary
articles.
Thought. A very scary thought.
Well, you know, we have to bring this stuff. You are an Aztec through and through, and you covered baseball actually when you were a student here, right?
Yeah, I covered Marshall Falk his final year on the football team, and then I covered baseball when Travis Lee, who made it to the big leagues, was there, and then became sports editor, so I covered a little bit of everything after that.
How do you think your experience with both as a journalism student here on campus and working at the Daily Aztec kind of prepared you for where you are now?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, I felt like even when I was a student, I felt like I was a real professional journalist. I considered myself on the same level as the San Diego Union Tribune or the Los Angeles Times. That's the kind of mindset that I had. You know, I had the same access that they had. It was an unbelievable experience. In fact, I remember once I happened to meet Jerry Coleman down in spring training, and I asked Jerry, I told him I'm a newspaper reporter right now for my campus newspaper, but I want to get into broadcasting. Like, what kind of advice would you give me on how to make that transition? And Jerry looked at me and he said, actually stay with newspapers. And I thought, well, what a jerk. Why is he saying that? You know, is he worried about his job or something? But he said, no, because words are the most important tool that you have, whether you're in radio or TV or in newspaper. And you're going to get more practice with your newspaper being able to command the English language. And so he said, if you can write, then you'll be able to speak at any point later on in your career. And I thought, wow, that's really good advice. And so just the repetition of working on a daily basis, of writing something or editing somebody's story and working with people. I mean, I felt like when I graduated from San Diego State, I felt like I'm ready right now. I don't need any postgraduate. I don't need to go anywhere else. I felt like I was ready. Definitely.
Well, and obviously you were if you got hired onto a newspaper right afterwards. And you know, Jerry Coleman's seen a few seasons. He might know what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. So, I mean, as far as your, when you covered things in the Daily Aztec, was there any kind of just a continuing story, the one story where you're just like, wow, I got to cover this? I mean, because I'm looking at some of the stuff and you look at it historically, like, you know, articles about Ted Tollner, and you see kind of the path the football team took since then. Keeping Aztec Bowl is an absurd idea, which I love that anyone uses the word absurd in a headline because I think that's just great. But, you know, looking at these things and kind of, you know, detailing the history of athletics here on campus, which is such a big part of our alumni base, is there that one story that you were just wowed about?
Well, I think the story that comes to mind is the Student Activity Center, which is now Aztec Bowl and the Cox Arena, because when I arrived on campus in the fall of '91, that was when it was originally supposed to open, but ground hadn't even broken. In fact, ground didn't even break on it until my final semester at San Diego State. And so I guess I guess the fan in me felt a little cheated that I didn't get to experience this great arena because of all of the protests and all of the lawsuits. But I mean, looking back on it now, it was a historical story, and it was fun to be able to chronicle it because there were so many different issues that were at stake. And it was sort of like, you know, I think that it was a big seismic shift in the basketball team because, you know, they played in Peterson Gym, which they couldn't, you know, you can't recruit to Peterson Gym, and they tried to play downtown at the sports arena, and that didn't work. And now we've seen what the basketball program has become, and it's unbelievable what it is. I mean, we used to just care about football and hoping to get over the hump as a football program. And then basketball came and it was just like, okay, you know, at least the women are really good. It was sort of like the mindset. And so now to see the way that the program has gone and just watching on television, the atmosphere at the arena, I got goosebumps watching some of those basketball games and feeling like, yeah, I wish I could have been a part of that as a student.
Yeah, it was definitely exciting. The St. Mary's game, I was actually there during the game, and it's just amazing to see 12,413 other people screaming and shouting together. And I think you're right, Cox Arena, soon to be VA Haas Arena, if you haven't heard yet, is going to you know, continue to keep our teams going, I think. And you know, as far as other sports go, you know, Steven Strasburg, we got to touch base on that because he is such an amazing story and has really propelled this team, I think, to the next level. What do you think?
Well, you know, just being in spring training for the last 5 weeks, you know, there's tons of scouts and executives, and I remember reading one story where where he like hit 99 on his first pitch on the radar gun, and then he sat like at 101 or something like that. And so I went to a couple of scouts or a couple of executives, and I was just like, hey, you know, did you guys have somebody at the game? What did you think? And they're like, oh yeah, this guy's unbelievable. And so when you're at a major league spring training and scouts and executives are talking about a pitcher at San Diego State, and he's the talk of baseball, and he's not even in professional baseball yet, but he's the talk of professional baseball about where he's going to be. And so it was really exciting to follow all of his starts and knowing how many other people in baseball are paying attention to him.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think Tony Gwynn's kind of hit the mark? Maybe would be a good way to put it, because I know for the past few seasons, it's been building towards this kind of a moment. How do you think Tony Gwynn's been as coach?
Fortunately, I've gotten a chance to interview Tony enough times that I felt like I was comfortable enough to do this. And so I think it was either 2 years or 3 years ago, I went up to Tony and I said, Tony, some of us alums are wondering when you're going to win. Like, what's the deal? And he's like, I know. They're going to run me out of here. And I was like, relax, Tony. They're not going to run you out of here. You're Tony Gwynn. The stadium's named after you. It's not like they're going to fire you. But nonetheless, I knew that he was frustrated by that he wanted to win. He's ultra competitive, and that he wanted to win faster than it's taken him to get the program where he's at. But now he's got it at a level that we all thought it would be and should be, and hopefully he can sustain it even once Steven is gone.
Yeah, and I know it's always nice to be higher ranked than our crosstown rivals in
yes.
USC. So that's exciting as well.
Yes, that is always exciting.
Now, in terms of your job that you do now with Dodger Talk and everything, how is that different from reporting in the newspaper?
I try to bring a reporter's mentality to the air, so that I want to make sure that I give people information. I want them to feel like when they're driving home from the game, that they can listen to my show, and they feel like even whether they watched the game or whether they didn't watch the game, they feel like they know everything that happened, and so they have all the details that they need to know. But you also want to make sure that it's entertaining, that it's funny, that you don't take yourself too serious, because it is just baseball. And so my co-host Ken Levine and I were very sarcastic. We goof around quite a bit, but at the same time, I think that we give people all the information they need to know, and hopefully we do it in an entertaining way, and we have fun with our callers.
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as Dodger Talk goes, do you have a crazy story that you can share from a caller or a game you covered or something?
Yeah, we have lots of crazy callers. That's kind of what makes the show great. I think the thing that stands out for me from last year is one day somebody called up and they asked why Juan Pierre can't play second base. Well, Juan Pierre is left-handed. He throws left-handed, and if you're a left-handed thrower, you can't play second base or shortstop or third base. But they just didn't understand this. They couldn't grasp the concept. And then like a week later, somebody else called and asked the question. And so we kind of explained the same thing. And then a week later, somebody called again, and I'm thinking, how many Dodger fans don't understand this? Or maybe is this like a goof? Are we on candid camera or something? And so then we ended up having fun with it, of course, once we realized that, and now it's an ongoing bit, about how, big breaking news, the Dodgers are going to move Juan Pierre to second base. And so it's stuff like that's fun, because you never know what somebody is going to say. I mean, we have screeners who take down the name and say what the person wants to talk about, but it's not that hard to fool a screener and say, this is what I want to talk about, and then talk about something different. So you never know. It's live. I learned real quickly, there's no delete button. There's no copy editor to make sure that everything is correct. I mean, once you say it, it's out there. So you got to be ready. You got to be quick. And but I think that's fun. My adrenaline definitely goes throughout the show.
Definitely. And coming from Northern California, how do you feel about covering the Dodgers yourself? I mean, I know it's obviously a great opportunity, but is there that kind of twinge of competitiveness from time to time when they're playing the Giants, for example?
Well, again, I wasn't a Giants fan, so that doesn't bother me.
Okay.
But I was an Oakland A's fan, so of course the 1988 World Series was a difficult chapter in my life, and you can't go to Dodger Stadium without seeing Kirk Gibson hit the home run off Dennis Eckersley. And so I smile a lot. Sometimes I turn my head away, but most of the time, I mean, even at the time, I understood it. It was such an amazing moment for baseball, but I mean, it's fun, and I've gotten to talk to Rick Honeycutt, is the Dodgers pitching coach, and he was on the A's at the time, and so I've talked with Rick about it a few times too. But I mean, it's I finally got over it. It took me a while, but I finally got over it.
Yeah, well, in terms of Northern California baseball, I know you just said you're not a Giants fan, but you wrote a book about Barry Bonds.
Yes.
He's kind of a big figure right now.
Kind of a polarizing figure. Yeah.
Yeah, well, especially with the whole steroids investigation, whatever you want to call it, controversy going on with baseball right now. What was it like to write a book about Bonds and then to see this all kind of break out?
Well, it wasn't exactly shocking, because you saw what the difference in his body was. And so, I mean, there was a lot of us who felt like he's probably doing something, but we can't prove it. In fact, it took a federal investigation with the feds and a guy digging through trash cans in a parking lot outside of Balco in order to get the information and to get subpoenas. So there was a part of me that felt disappointed that I couldn't do more as a reporter, but at the same time I realized, again, it took a federal investigation for this to come out. I think it's a great thing that it all has come out, though, because it wasn't hard to just look at the players and look at the numbers and look at the way the game was played to see that something was not right here, that something different was going on. And I still don't think that baseball is 100% clean, but I think it's a whole lot cleaner than it was. And as far as Barry and all of his records, I think it's pretty clear that he got some help, that he got a lot of help. But there was a lot of guys who he was competing against who had a lot of help. I mean, there's some pitchers who were on steroids who struck him out. There were some outfielders who were on steroids who took away home runs from him. And so it wasn't a level playing field, because because some guys were using it, but because so many were using, it's a lot more level than a lot of people I think want to admit.
And as far as writing a book, I mean, that's obviously very, very different from being a newspaper, especially covering a beat reporter. How was the process of just coming up with a book like that?
Yeah, well, it happened, it was the year that he hit the 73 home runs and that he broke the record. And so I remember deciding about the middle of September, I thought about, if he breaks this record, this would be a cool book to write about. And so I didn't want to write a life story. I just wanted to write a story about one season, what it was like through the eyes and ears of the people who were around it every day. And so I got working on it the day after the season ended. I wrote the first draft in 30 days, which is pretty insane because the book is 330 something pages. But I wrote it like a beat writer. I wrote it like I was on a deadline. I had like a weekend where I wrote 4 chapters, and then I was so fried for 2 days that I couldn't do anything. I was like a walking zombie. But I knew that if you're going to write a book about one season, it needs to come out the year after, or else nobody cares. Unless it's 20 or 30 years later, then maybe you can look back on it. So I wrote it as quick as I could, using the notes that I cultivated throughout the season, the interviews that I had with Barry. I got to spend one day with him as he worked out. In fact, I look back at that one day as really funny because Greg Anderson, who served a lot of time in prison because he wouldn't talk about Barry, was in there. One of his stretch guys, Harvey, was there. Gary Sheffield was there, who also became involved in the Balco. Barry Bonds' dad, Bobby, was there, and me. It was the 5 of us, and spent about an entire day together as they were working out in the gym and as they were taking batting practice. And that's where I got the final pieces of information that I needed for the book. And I look back on that now and I'm just like, wow, that was an interesting day.
It definitely is part of kind of his inner circle for the day because of the folks that he was hanging out with.
Yeah, those are the people that he trusted. Those are pretty much the only people that he trusted, his dad, his strength guy, and his flexibility guy.
It was very interesting. And now, looking back on it, do you see yourself writing more books like this or, about other great sports figures?
Yeah, I definitely like to write some more books at some point. Sometimes I wonder where I got the energy to do it because it's a long season, and after 7 and 8 months of writing 2 stories every day, the idea of sitting down and writing a book seems exhausting to me. Even now, just being on the radio, it's not that hard of work, but it just seems like, wow, where did I get the energy? I guess I ought to be youthful again. So I would definitely like to. I just need to find the right idea, the right topic, and make sure that it's something that, the thing about books is that you want to write a book that people care about, that people are going to read, the publishers these days are a whole lot more selective with what they publish, and so you just got to find the right niche.
Definitely. Now, as far as all other things baseball, National League West is always interesting to me. Obviously, the Padres do not have good projections right now. As a Padres fan, that saddens me, but it's, who do you see kind of being the competitive team that kind of goes to the forefront and wins this division?
Well, even if I wasn't doing Dodger talk, I would say the Dodgers are the team to beat because of Manny Ramirez and because of how far they went last year. They do have some pitching problems, so we'll see how that develops. Of course, a lot of teams in baseball have pitching issues. I see the Dodgers and Diamondbacks going at it just like last year. I think the Giants could surprise, but they need more offense. The great thing about baseball the last 4 or 5 years, especially in the National League, is that there has been no clear-cut team to beat. Almost every year you've gone into the playoffs and you've thought any one of these 4 teams has a shot. Like the Cubs, for example, last year. They had the most wins in the National League, but they were swept away in 3 games. So that's why they play the game. It's why it's so much fun to be around it every day. It's a soap opera. It's a soap opera for baseball nuts.
Well, speaking of the Dodgers, I know opening day, just here at Petco Park against the Padres and stuff, and it was our largest crowd ever. When you come into, as visitors into a place like Petco Park, what's the feeling that you get? From covering the team, obviously.
Well, I think the Dodger-Padre games are always so special because they're so close. There's always a ton of Padre fans in Los Angeles. There's a ton of Dodger fans in San Diego, and so it adds a really good element to it because it's almost like San Diego State USD or something because they're so close. And just walking around the Gaslamp District, you see tons of Dodger fans in their hats and their T-shirts, and so there's a lot of electricity that's in the ballpark because of that. And so I think that always makes it fun. And so I'm sure the Dodger fans are going to take a little bit of credit for helping that record attendance. And meanwhile, I'm sure the Padre fans are going to, they make their presence known up in Los Angeles. But that's what sports are all about. That's what the sports are supposed to be fun like that, when you're cheering on your team and you're razzing the other team. And as long as it's in good fun and there's no fights that are breaking out, although that tends to happen. more times than we'd like it to happen. But I mean, sports are an escape. I mean, we go to sporting events to escape whatever's going on in our lives, and we follow these guys, even though we know that it really doesn't matter in the big picture. When the game is going on, when Manny Ramirez is in the batter's box, nothing else in the world matters. It's just all about that moment. And so I think that's what I love about sports, is the emotions that it triggers in you, and how you're able to live vicariously through these guys, through the good and the bad.
Definitely. Well, it's definitely, I know folks are kind of seeing it as a little escape from the different things that are going on in the world right now, especially with the recession and stuff. And I know a lot of baseball parks are trying to make it more affordable for people to go, so you can still have those little joys and that entertainment value. And the teams will hopefully provide it for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I know a lot of teams have offered major discounted tickets for families, and a lot of the concession prices are going down, which is a good thing. I saw that at San Diego and also in Los Angeles. And so they're doing their part, and it's going to be very interesting to see just how much baseball, because baseball is really the first sport whose off-season and then leading into the season with season ticket holders was in the middle of this recession. And there's so many games. It's not like football where it's just 8 games, or 8 home games, I should say. Baseball, there's 81 home games. And so it's really going to be an interesting test of baseball's ability to survive and perhaps even thrive during this economic crisis.
Definitely. Well, some deep thoughts to end our fun interview. But again, I'm Lorena Nava-Rogero. You've been watching SDSU Live with Josh Suchon, host of Daughter Talk, and again, a 1996 alum of our journalism program here on campus. And thanks for tuning in, and we hope you watch again every Wednesday at noon.